Catherine, it's Miss Davis. Mia. She had a little friction with a classmate. Miss Davis's voice, compressed and distorted by the phone's connection, was laced with a familiar, cautious tone. I knew it well. At the Acorn Academy, the elite private preschool Mia attended, the teachers treated every deep-pocketed parent with that same brand of delicate customer service. "Get to the point," I interrupted, gently placing the freshly cut, dew-kissed gardenia onto a white porcelain tray beside me. The cool touch of the petals on my fingertips did little to soothe the irritation simmering inside me. Yes, well, it was with a boy from the older class, Aiden Cole. Mia's cheek was scratched. It's not serious, but it did break the skin. The other parent is on their way now. We were hoping you could... Aiden Cole. That last name pricked my ear like a tiny needle. I didn't dwell on it, but the nameless fire in my chest burned hotter. The perfect, sterile world I had so carefully constructed for Mia had finally been breached by an outside force. "I'll be right there." I hung up and quickly changed out of my loungewear. The woman in the mirror was polished, her face a mask of serene composure. She wore a tailored Chanel suit, and on her wrist, a discreetly expensive Jaeger-LeCoultre Reverso watch. This was Catherine Shen, a successful, independent, and perhaps even cold woman, not the housewife from 3 years ago whose hand trembled so badly she could barely hold the pen to sign her divorce papers. The drive from my penthouse at the Summit Residences in downtown Chicago to the Acorn Academy in the northern suburbs was only 40 minutes. My white Porsche Taycan moved through traffic with a silent, swift efficiency that mirrored my state of mind. I wasn't panicked, nor was I angry to the point of irrationality. My brain, honed by 3 years in crisis management, was already running diagnostics, analyzing the situation, creating response scenarios, assessing risks. It was instinct now to handle the most volatile situations with the calmest demeanor. But when Miss Davis led me into the infirmary, the sharp, sterile scent of antiseptic filling the air, all my carefully constructed composure shattered. My daughter, Mia, was sitting on a small white cot. She was wearing her favorite blue princess dress, but now she looked like a butterfly caught in the rain, her wings drooping. Her small body was curled into a ball, her head bowed, her fine, soft hair hiding most of her face. She heard my footsteps and slowly looked up. On that little face I kissed 1,000 times a day, 3 parallel crimson lines stretched from the corner of her left eye down her cheek. They weren't deep, but on her pale, flawless skin they were shockingly stark. The blood had been wiped away, leaving dark red, clotted tracks. The skin around them was puffy and inflamed. She saw me, her little lip trembled, and her big eyes instantly filled with tears, but she fought stubbornly to keep them from falling. "Mommy," she whispered, her voice soft and full of hurt. In that moment, I felt an invisible hand clench around my heart, squeezing so tightly I could barely breathe. I rushed to her side and knelt, my fingers gently touching the unmarred part of her cheek. My voice trembled with suppressed rage. "Does it hurt, sweetie?" She shook her head, but the tears finally betrayed her, rolling down her face and landing on the back of my hand, hot as coals. "Miss Davis, the security footage?" My voice was ice. My gaze shifted from my daughter's face directly to the helpless teacher. Miss Davis's face went pale, her eyes darting away. "Catherine, the thing is, the area where the children were playing, it's a surveillance blind spot. The same old script." I scoffed internally. A surveillance blind spot. A euphemism for a privilege zone, reserved for certain special children. The children of parents who made 7-figure donations to this school naturally had the right to disappear from camera feeds. "So, we only have verbal accounts of what happened. Is that it?" I stood up, my height giving me an advantage as I looked down at her. "In that case, where are the other child and his parent?" In the headmaster's office," Miss Davis stammered, her voice barely a whisper. "The other family is somewhat high profile. The headmaster is handling it personally. High profile. Important enough for the headmaster himself to run interference. Their donation must have been substantial." I took my daughter's small, cool hand. "Don't be scared, Mia. Mommy's here. Let's go meet the little boy who hurt you, okay?" Mia nodded, her hand gripping my fingers as if they were her only anchor. I led her down the spotless hallway, the sharp click of my heels echoing in the empty corridor. Each sound felt like a hammer blow against my heart. The door to the headmaster's office was slightly ajar. From inside, I could hear the low, familiar rumble of a man's voice and the sharp, petulant complaint of a woman. Honestly, it's such a small thing. Kids get into scuffles. Do we really need to make such a big deal out of it? Our Aiden is such a good boy. I'm sure that little girl started it. My steps faltered. That man's voice. I would recognize it even if it were Ash. I took a deep breath and pushed open the heavy, solid wood door. Inside, a lavishly dressed woman was seated on the sofa, a boisterous-looking boy nestled in her lap. Standing beside her, impeccably dressed in a tailored suit, was a man whose profile was as sharp and defined as I remembered. He seemed to sense the shift in light from the doorway and slowly turned his head. The moment our eyes met, time froze. Ethan Cole, my ex-husband. The look of composed annoyance on his face shattered instantly, replaced by a complex cocktail of shock, disgust, and a flicker of something like shame. The woman beside him, Tiffany, was clearly oblivious. She shot a glance at me, then at Mia, a condescending smirk spreading across her face. Oh, here we are, the main event, and I thought it was someone important, just a single mom. Explains why she's making a federal case out of a little scratch. No discipline at home, I suppose. Ethan's lips parted, as if he wanted to say something, but no words came out. He just stared at me, his eyes a swirling vortex of emotions I couldn't decipher. I ignored Tiffany's provocation. My gaze didn't linger on her for more than a second. I just looked at Ethan, the man I had once loved to the bone and hated to the marrow. 3 years. He was more handsome, more polished, and more of a stranger than ever. Time had been kind to him, bestowing only the suave charm of a mature man, leaving no trace of hardship. Slowly, a cold, almost cruel smile spread across my lips. I looked down at my daughter, who was trembling slightly in my arms. Then, in a voice clear enough for everyone in the room to hear, I said word by word, "Mia, don't be scared. Next time anyone lays a hand on you, you hit them back. Hit them until they cry. Hit them until they're scared. Hit them until they never dare to touch you again. Mommy will pay for the medical bills. Let your uncle foot the bill." My voice wasn't loud, but it landed in the quiet office like a boulder dropped into a still pond, sending shockwaves through the room. Tiffany was the first to react. The smug smile on her perfectly maintained face froze, then twisted into a mask of fury. She shot to her feet, her voice a shrill shriek. "What did you say, you psycho? You're teaching your child to be violent? You want to hit my son? Who the hell do you think you are?" The headmaster and Miss Davis were ashen-faced. They had clearly not anticipated that the elegant, aloof Miss Shen would be capable of such an explosive declaration. And Ethan. The shock on his face slowly hardened into a deep, resonant anger. He stared at me, his eyes burning holes into my face. "Catherine, are you insane?" He ground out through clenched teeth, his voice dripping with the righteous indignation of a superior being who had just been offended. "Do you have any idea what you're saying in front of a child?" I finally lifted my gaze from my daughter to meet his. I didn't flinch. In fact, my smile widened. "Of course I do. I'm teaching my daughter how to protect herself in a world where the strong prey on the weak. Unlike some people," I paused, my eyes flicking to the defiant little boy in his new wife's arms, "who only teach their children how to throw their weight around and then hide behind their parents. You!" Tiffany was shaking with rage, pointing a manicured finger at me. "Your daughter tried to steal Aiden's toy. He was just trying to get it back. She fell and scratched herself by accident. How dare you slander us?" "Is that so?" I walked calmly to the headmaster's desk and placed my phone on its polished surface. I tapped the screen, and a video began to play. Several children were playing near a slide. Mia was sitting quietly in a corner, hugging a stuffed rabbit. Aiden Cole walked over and, without a word, tried to snatch it. When Mia resisted, he shoved her. She fell to the ground. He grabbed the rabbit, but apparently that wasn't enough. He leaned over and deliberately dragged his fingernails down her face. The video was short and a little shaky, clearly filmed from a low angle. "Miss Davis, you said that area was a surveillance blind spot, but that doesn't mean every spot is. My daughter's smartwatch, in addition to GPS and calling, has an emergency video recording function. The angle isn't perfect, but it's clear enough to see what happened. My voice was flat, as if I were stating an irrelevant fact. Miss Davis's face went from white to translucent. She opened her mouth, but no sound came out. The headmaster's expression was a kaleidoscope of horror and panic. He looked at me, then at the stone-faced Ethan Cole, beads of sweat forming on his brow. Tiffany's bluster vanished. She stared at the video in disbelief, then back at me, muttering, "No, that's impossible. Aiden, Ethan's expression could no longer be described as merely dark. He snatched Tiffany's phone from her hand. It was clearly displaying a group chat where she had, no doubt, been spinning her own version of events. He stared at my phone, then back at his breathing growing heavy. I didn't need to see it to know she'd been painting her son as the victim in the parent group chat. My video was a scalpel, slicing through her web of lies. "Catherine, what do you want?" Ethan finally spoke, his voice hoarse. He put the phone down, his gaze heavy as he looked at me, no longer just with anger, but with a new layer of caution and scrutiny. "What do I want?" I repeated his words, finding them almost comical. "Mr. Cole, that's a fascinating question. Your son injured my daughter. Your current wife slandered my daughter and insulted me. And now you're asking me what I want?" I walked toward him, my heels giving me enough height to meet his gaze directly. We stood less than 2 feet apart. I could smell the expensive, woody scent of his cologne, so different from the one he wore 3 years ago. "I want you, your wife, and your son to stand right here and offer my daughter, Mia Shen, a formal, bowing apology. I want the child who assaulted her to be expelled from this school, effective immediately. And I want a public, written explanation from the school regarding its surveillance blind spots and teacher negligence, along with a concrete plan for reform. All 3 conditions, not one less." My voice was quiet, but every word landed with the force of a nail being hammered into wood. Tiffany shrieked as if she'd heard the world's greatest joke. "You're dreaming. Apologize to that little nobody, and get my son expelled? Do you have any idea how much we donate to Acorn Academy every year? Do you know who Ethan is?" "Of course I know," I said, looking at her with something akin to pity. "I know exactly who he is, which is why I know that he cares more about his reputation and his company's stock price than you do. Tiffany, you may think marrying into wealth gives you a free pass to do as you please, but you seem to have forgotten. The more pristine the family image, the more valuable a flawless facade becomes. And today, you and your son are personally tearing that facade to shreds." With that, I turned my attention back to Ethan. "Ethan Cole, my terms. Do you accept?" He didn't answer immediately. He just stared at me, his expression a tangled mess. He seemed to be searching my face for a trace of the submissive, accommodating woman he had known 3 years ago, the woman who lived for his approval. He failed. The Catherine Shen standing before him was a stranger, calm, powerful, and radiating hostility. "Catherine, we don't have to make this so ugly," he finally said, his tone softening slightly, taking on a negotiating edge. "Mia's medical expenses, pain, and suffering. I'll pay double. No, 10 times the amount. I'll have Aiden apologize in person. As for the school, I'll make sure they give you whatever you want. Expulsion isn't necessary. It's just kids being kids." "Stop," I cut him off. "Ethan, do you really think after all these years I'm still the woman you can buy off with money?" The smile on my face grew colder. "And don't call me Catherine. It sounds disgusting coming from you. It's Miss Shen. Also, my daughter doesn't use your last name anymore. She uses mine. She's Mia Shen." "You wouldn't dare." Ethan was finally thoroughly enraged. He took a sharp step forward, the aura of authority he cultivated in boardrooms washing over me. "Mia is my daughter. She has Cole blood in her veins. What right do you have to change her name?" "The right granted to me by the divorce decree you signed, which gives me full physical and legal custody, including all educational and medical decisions. The right I earned over the past 3 years while you did nothing but have your assistant wire a laughable amount of child support once a month without so much as a single visit. What right do you have to stand here and invoke the word father in my presence?" My voice rose, the dam of 3 years of repressed anger and hurt finally breaking. Just then, my phone vibrated in my pocket. I pulled it out. It was a text from Julian Vance. "Arrived. Just finished my meeting. I'm outside the school." I put my phone away, the last shred of my hesitation dissolving. I looked up, meeting the furious gaze of Ethan Cole and the gloating expression of Tiffany, who was clearly enjoying the spectacle. I repeated my earlier question, this time with an ultimatum. My friend is here. I'm asking you one last time. My terms. Do you accept them or not? Friend? Tiffany sneered. My. You certainly moved on fast. What, you think bringing some random guy here is going to intimidate us? Ethan, I can't wait to see what kind of impressive figure she's managed to dig up. Ethan had regained his composure. He adjusted his tie, slipping back into his corporate raider persona, his eyes laced with disdain. Catherine, stop bluffing. You think I don't know what your life has been like these past few years? Without the Cole family, you're nothing. Swallow your pathetic pride, take the money, and leave with the child. It's the best offer you're going to get. I laughed. I didn't say another word. I just took my daughter's hand and turned toward the office door. Let's go, Mia. Mommy's taking you to see Uncle Julian. Some people can't give you justice, so we'll get it for ourselves. When I pulled open the heavy office door, Julian Vance was standing right outside. He wasn't wearing his usual bespoke suit for board meetings, but a simple, exquisitely tailored, dark gray cashmere sweater and slacks. He was tall and carried himself with a quiet, scholarly elegance that nonetheless commanded the space around him. He saw me and smiled, but his smile instantly vanished when his eyes fell on Mia and the scratches on her face. The warmth in his eyes was replaced by a flash of cold, sharp anger. What happened? He knelt, effortlessly scooping Mia into his arms, his fingers carefully avoiding her wound as he gently stroked her hair. His voice was low and steady, imbued with a power that could soothe any storm. The moment Mia saw him, the tension in her little body melted away. She buried her face in his shoulder, as if she had found the safest harbor in the world, and mumbled, "Uncle Julian." Julian didn't press further. He just patted her back gently, then lifted his head, his gaze traveling past me to Ethan and Tiffany inside the office. In that instant, the air in the room seemed to freeze. The mockery on Tiffany's face curdled, then solidified into a mask of blank disbelief. Her jaw dropped, as if her throat had been seized, and she couldn't make a sound. As for Ethan, his look of contempt and condescension crumbled at the same moment. His pupils constricted, his body went rigid. It was the primal reaction of prey spotting an apex predator. He stared at Julian, his lips moving silently, unable to form words. The headmaster looked like he'd seen a ghost. His knees buckled and he nearly collapsed, all the color drained from his face as he stammered, Mr. Vance? Julian Vance, the true upper echelon of the financial world, the chairman of the Vance Group, a man who could make the entire Midwest business community tremble with a single phone call. To a so-called new money tycoon like Ethan Cole, his name was a legend, an entity to be revered from a great distance. Ethan's company had recently pulled every string imaginable just to get a meeting with a junior vice president at one of Vance Group's subsidiaries to secure a crucial round of funding. And now, the mythical, rarely seen chairman himself was holding my daughter, looking at him with a cool, appraising gaze. "You did this?" Julian's voice was placid, but it carried the weight of a gathering storm. He ignored everyone else, his eyes fixed on Aiden Cole, who was shrinking in his mother's arms. Aiden was terrified by his stare and burrowed deeper into Tiffany's embrace. Tiffany finally found her voice, stammering, No, Mr. Vance. How are you here? This is all a misunderstanding, a terrible misunderstanding." Julian didn't even look at her. His gaze returned to Ethan. "Mr. Cole, is it?" he said calmly. "I believe I've seen your name on a list for some financial summit. I hear your company is preparing for its IPO." A cold sweat broke out on Ethan's forehead. He swallowed hard. "Yes, Mr. Vance, it's an honor. Today was a misunderstanding. I didn't realize Mia was Miss Shen's daughter." "Oh?" Julian's eyebrow arched slightly, a gesture of immense pressure. "So if she weren't Catherine's daughter, if she were just the child of an ordinary family, it would be acceptable for your son to assault her, for your wife to slander her, and for you to simply buy them off with money? Is that it?" His voice remained even, but each word was a sledgehammer, striking Ethan's conscience. Ethan's face went from white to green, then to a deathly gray. He couldn't refute it, because Julian had just articulated his exact thoughts and actions. I watched it all unfold, a cold observer. This was what I wanted. It wasn't about having Julian fight my battles. It was about making Ethan Cole see that the power dynamic between us was no longer what it was 3 years ago. I wanted him to understand that the status, wealth, and power he was so proud of were utterly insignificant in the face of true influence. Catherine. Julian turned from the crumbling Ethan and looked at me, his eyes gentle again. How do you want to handle this? He handed the power back to me, completely and publicly. In front of Ethan, in front of everyone who had underestimated me, he made his allegiance and his respect for me unequivocally clear. I took a deep breath, met Ethan's dead-eyed stare, and said clearly, my terms, as I stated before. First, the 3 of them apologized to my daughter with a formal bow. Second, Aiden Cole is expelled. Third, the school issues a public statement and reforms its policies. I paused, then my gaze shifted to the pale-faced headmaster. Now I'm adding a 4th. Tomorrow I want you and your administrative team to read a formal apology in front of the entire school. It seems the Acorn Academy's educational philosophy needs a complete overhaul. You're crazy! You're a lunatic! Tiffany finally broke down, screaming hysterically. Expel my son? Make the headmaster apologize? Who do you think you are? Mr. Vance, don't let this woman fool you. She's a gold digger. Ethan dumped her 3 years ago, and now she's latched onto you. She doesn't love you. She only loves your money. Julian's expression hardened. But before he could speak, Ethan lunged forward and slapped Tiffany hard across the face. The sharp crack echoed in the silent office. Everyone froze. Tiffany held her cheek, staring at Ethan in disbelief. You hit me? You hit me for this, bitch? Shut up! Ethan's eyes were bloodshot. He was like a cornered animal, hissing in a low growl. Haven't you embarrassed me enough? He didn't hit her for me, or even because of Julian's presence. He hit her for himself, for his pathetic career and future, which were about to be incinerated by her stupidity. In the face of absolute self-interest, love and family were as fragile as paper. I'd learned that lesson 3 years ago. Now, it was Tiffany's turn. Ethan turned to face me, to face Julian. He took a deep, shuddering breath, and then, under the shocked gazes of everyone present, he slowly, deliberately bent his proud back. I'm sorry, he said to Mia, his voice ragged. It was my fault. I didn't raise my son properly. Please forgive me. He straightened up and looked at me, his eyes filled with humiliation, resentment, and a flicker of regret I couldn't quite place. Catherine, I accept your terms. Ethan's surrender was faster and more complete than I had anticipated. In front of everyone, he dragged the still stunned Aiden over and forced him into a 90-degree bow in front of Mia. The spoiled little tyrant, having never experienced such humiliation, burst into loud, wailing sobs. Tiffany clutched her red, swollen cheek, her eyes shooting daggers of pure hatred at me, but she didn't dare say another word. She knew better than anyone that Ethan's slap had not just struck her face, but her position in his family. A wife who brought nothing but trouble was a liability a man like him would not tolerate for long. The headmaster was even more efficient. He practically tripped over himself to agree to all my conditions, immediately removing Miss Davis as Mia's teacher and promising a school-wide announcement and the formation of a special task force to investigate bullying issues first thing in the morning. A confrontation that had been on the verge of exploding was over, crushed into submission within 10 minutes of Julian's arrival. I felt no joy in victory, only a profound exhaustion. I asked Julian to take Mia to the car while I stayed behind to finalize the details. I needed the headmaster's written, stamped commitment and confirmation of Aiden Cole's withdrawal. I no longer trusted verbal promises, especially from men like these. When I walked out of the office with the documents, Ethan was the only one left in the hallway. He was standing by the window, his back to me. The setting sun cast his silhouette in a long, lonely shadow. He turned as he heard my footsteps. "Can we talk?" His voice was hoarse, stripped of its earlier arrogance, replaced by a note of pleading. "There's nothing to talk about," I replied coldly, walking past him. "Catherine," he called out, his voice thick with a suppressed pain. "Just a few minutes." I stopped, but didn't turn around. "About Julian Vance. When did you get together with him?" he asked, his voice so soft it was almost a whisper. I turned to face him. His face was a canvas of confusion and disbelief. I found it almost laughable. "Mr. Cole, are you confused? Who I'm with and when is none of your business. We've been divorced for 3 years. You married your one true love, and I went my own way." "In what capacity are you asking me this question? As my ex-husband? Or as my daughter's biological father?" The words biological father cut him like a knife. He flinched. I never expected. I thought you were struggling." I finally laughed out loud. "You thought that without you I wouldn't survive? That I'd be broke, miserable, crying myself to sleep every night, still obsessed with you?" I shook my head, looking at him as if he were a naive child. "Ethan, you are unbelievably conceited. Put away your pathetic sense of superiority. I am 1,000 times better off without you." "Are you?" He suddenly stepped closer, his eyes red-rimmed, boring into mine. "What about him? Julian Vance? Do you know him? Do you have any idea what kind of man he is?" "Catherine, don't be a fool. You think you've escaped one hell only to land in paradise? Men like him are 100 times more complex than I am. You can't handle him." His words were poison darts. I knew he might be right. Julian's world was deeper and more dangerous than Ethan's. But so what? I can't handle him? I shot back, meeting his gaze. "And I could handle you?" 3 years ago, when you threw me out with nothing for Tiffany, for your so-called true love, did you ever stop to think if I could handle the world? You left me in a desperate situation, with barely any savings and an infant to feed. How is the man you were then any different from the man you imagine him to be now? He opened his mouth, but my words left him speechless. "Ethan, stop talking to me with this fake concern. It makes me sick. You don't care if I'm doing well. You just can't stand that I'm doing better than you. You can't accept that your ex-wife, the woman you abandoned, found a man who is infinitely more powerful than you are. It's an insult to your fragile ego. That's all this is. You can relax. My relationship with Julian isn't what you think. We're business partners, allies. He has his goals, I have my needs. It's a mutually beneficial arrangement. Clean, simple, and far more reliable than your hypocritical version of love." I finished, turned my back on him, and walked away. From behind me, I heard his low, desperate growl. "A business arrangement? Catherine, what have you turned yourself into? A commodity to be traded." I didn't stop walking. A commodity? Maybe. In this world, apart from blood ties, what relationship isn't a transaction? Marriage, love, friendship, they are all trades. The only difference is the currency. Some use affection, some use beauty, some use money. I, Catherine Shen, use my brain, my professional skills, my value as a top-tier crisis manager. That was the most important lesson I learned after leaving Ethan Cole. When I got into the car, Julian was dabbing Mia's cheek with an antiseptic wipe from a small first aid kit. His movements were incredibly gentle, a stark contrast to his formidable reputation. Mia was being brave, not making a sound, just watching him with wide, trusting eyes. "This might sting a little. Be brave," Julian said softly. "I'm not scared," Mia replied in her small voice. "Mommy says I'm a brave girl." Julian smiled and looked up at me, his eyes asking a question. I shook my head, letting him know I was fine. He finished cleaning the cuts and applied a cute cartoon Band-Aid before starting the car. The Taycan pulled away smoothly, leaving the magnificent and cold school building far behind. "All settled?" he asked. I leaned back against the seat, feeling utterly drained. "Thank you for today. We're allies, aren't we?" He kept his eyes on the road, his tone matter of fact. "Helping you is helping me. If Cole's company had gone public successfully, it would have strengthened one of my main competitors. I was just pulling a weed before it could grow." He was always like that, explaining everything in clear, transactional terms, as if our relationship truly were nothing more than a strategic exchange. I knew it was his way of protecting himself, and me. "Then why did you come?" I couldn't help but ask. "When I texted you, weren't you supposed to be in an important meeting?" He was quiet for a moment. "That meeting wasn't as important as you and Mia." My heart skipped a beat. Silence filled the car, broken only by the sound of Mia's even breathing. She had fallen asleep in her car seat, tear tracks still faint on her cheeks. I watched the city lights streak past the window, a river of shimmering color. I thought the day's drama was over. I had no idea it was just the beginning. Back at the Summit residences, Julian carried the sleeping Mia inside. Our housekeeper, Maria, had dinner ready and gasped when she saw the Band-Aid on Mia's face. Julian put a finger to his lips and carried Mia straight to her room. I stood in the living room, watching as he gently laid her on the bed, took off her tiny shoes, and tucked her in, his movements as practiced as if he'd done it 1,000 times. In that moment, he wasn't the iron-fisted chairman of the Vance Group. He was just a gentle, reassuring presence. 3 years ago, when I left my marriage with nothing but Mia, I was at rock bottom. Julian Vance had been the one to pull me up. At the time, he was facing a vicious internal family power struggle and a PR crisis. And I, the discarded ex-wife of a wealthy family, used my intimate knowledge of high society's rules and a desperate, nothing-to-lose ferocity to orchestrate a textbook-perfect media counteroffensive that helped him secure his position. Since then, we had become the strongest of allies. He gave me capital, resources, and a platform to start my own crisis management firm. I became his sharpest weapon, neutralizing any threats to his empire, both business and personal. Our relationship was built on gratitude, mutual interest, and a deep understanding. The one thing it lacked was romance. At least, that was the line we both tacitly agreed to maintain. Julian emerged from the bedroom and, seeing me lost in thought, walked to the bar and poured 2 glasses of scotch, handing one to me. "Ethan Cole won't let this go," he said, breaking the silence. I took the glass, the ice cubes clinking softly. "I know. After a humiliation like that, he'll find a way to retaliate." "He can't," Julian said, his voice calm but absolute. "I've already had my legal team send a notice to his IPO underwriters, advising them of the potential risks Mr. Cole's questionable personal ethics and domestic disputes could pose to the company. His path to going public is, if not dead, delayed by at least a year. A lot can happen in a year." A chill went down my spine, a masterstroke. He hadn't even waited for me to ask for help. He had already cut off Ethan's escape route. I looked at him, unsure of what to say. "I told you, helping you is helping me," he said, taking a sip of his drink, his eyes dark. "I just don't like my allies being distracted by irrelevant people and their petty dramas." I fell silent. Irrelevant people. Yes, in Julian's world, Ethan Cole was utterly irrelevant, but to me, he was the man I had loved, hated, and lived with for 5 years. The father of my child. That history wasn't so easily erased. My phone vibrated, a text from an unknown number. I opened it, and my eyes widened. It was a photo, taken from a sneaky angle, of Julian and me talking in the school hallway. Ethan was in the background, a forlorn silhouette. Below the photo was a line of text. "Catherine, you think you won? I can make you lose everything you gained today. And then some, I promise." The sender, I had no doubt, was Tiffany. I showed the phone to Julian. He glanced at it, his expression unchanging. "Are you scared?" he asked simply. I shook my head, a cold smile touching my lips. "She's declaring war. She just chose the wrong opponent." If Ethan was constrained by his reputation and bottom line, a woman like Tiffany, blinded by jealousy and rage, was far more dangerous. She would be reckless. "She wants to play the media game," I said to Julian, a familiar fire lighting in my eyes. "In that case, I'll be happy to show her what a professional looks like." Julian looked at my battle-ready stance and chuckled. "I was hoping you'd take a few days off. It seems you can't sit still. When you're attacked in your own home, you don't wait to fight back." I shrugged, already in work mode. I put down my glass, my mind racing. Her playbook is simple. 1. Smear me as a gold-digging, social-climbing mother who abandoned her husband. 2. Play the victim, painting herself as the righteous wife bullied by the ex. 3. Use my hit him back speech to portray me as a violent, unhinged parent. She'll leak it all to gossip blogs, hire bots to drive the narrative, and crucify me in the court of public opinion. "And my plan," I continued, dialing my assistant, "is to drop a bigger bomb before she can even light her fuse." "Connie," I said into the phone, "I need a full background check on a Tiffany Cole. Family, education, dating history, credit card statements, everything. Also, get me a meeting with Jessica Liu at Vanity Fair. Tell her I have an exclusive story for her about a single mother's comeback in the corporate world. The sooner, the better." After I hung up, I saw Julian watching me with an appreciative gaze. "You're always like this. Once you're in the zone, you're like a fully fueled fighter jet." What can I say? You can't just sit there when someone's trying to burn your house down. Just then, Julian's phone rang. He glanced at the caller ID, and his brow furrowed almost imperceptibly. He walked over to the floor-to-ceiling window to take the call, his voice low, but I could still make out fragments. The estate. My father. The marriage. He ended the call, his expression returning to neutral, but I saw a new, unreadable weight in his eyes. I have to go. Something at the office, he said. Okay. I didn't ask. Our unspoken rule was never to pry into each other's private lives. He was at the door, his hand on the handle, when he turned back. Catherine, he said, hesitating. What is it? He paused for a few seconds. Tiffany. If you need me to, I can make her disappear from this city. I was taken aback for a moment, then I smiled. No need. A minor character like her isn't worthy of your attention. It would be like using a sledgehammer to kill a fly. He smiled back, nodded, and left. The moment the door clicked shut, the apartment was silent again. I stood alone in the vast living room, watching the ice melt in my glass, my heart far from calm. That phone call and his parting words pricked at me. We were allies, but are alliances ever permanent? If his powerful father forced him into an arranged marriage with some society heiress, where would that leave Mia and me? I shook my head, pushing the thoughts away. My priority was winning the war against Tiffany. I was heading to my home office when my phone buzzed again. A video call. I saw the name on the screen and, after a moment's hesitation, answered. An elderly, kind face appeared. Catherine, sweetie? It was my mom, her voice tinged with worry. Did you go to Mia's school today? Maria mentioned something about an argument. My heart sank. I'd forgotten to tell Maria not to worry her. It was nothing, Mom. A small issue, all resolved, I said with a forced smile. Nothing? I just saw a video in the residents' group chat. Someone said you and Ethan got into a huge fight and that you have a new man, someone even richer than Ethan. What is going on? My blood ran cold. Residents' group chat. A video. Tiffany had moved faster than I thought. I had my mom forward it to me immediately. The second I opened it, I felt a chill spread through my limbs. The video was shot in the parking lot of the Acorn Academy, shaky and clearly filmed from a hidden spot. It starred me, Julian, holding Mia, and Ethan. He had rushed out to confront us as we were getting into the car. There was no audio, but the visuals were explosive. Ethan was shouting at me, his face contorted with emotion. I remained icily calm. Julian stepped between us, shielding me, his sheer presence enough to make Ethan flinch and retreat, watching helplessly as we drove away. The title was pure clickbait. Ex-husband begs for reconciliation. Ex-wife's new billionaire boyfriend shuts him down. Real Housewives of Chicago gets real. It was posted by a local gossip blog I'd never heard of, just half an hour ago. It already had over 100,000 views. The comments were a wildfire. Holy shit, isn't that Ethan Cole, the tech mogul? His ex-wife is a badass. That guy in the Porsche is on another level, so much hotter than the ex. This drama is better than Netflix. Who is the new guy? I need the tea. Am I the only one who feels bad for the little girl? Poor kid. Stentfu with your virtue signaling. The ex obviously came looking for trouble. Team Catherine. Lol, Team Catherine? More like Team Gold Digger. She just upgraded to a bigger bank account. I've seen her type before. Tiffany's strategy was clear. She wasn't attacking me directly. She was using this salacious, high-drama narrative to throw me into the public arena. She knew a direct smear campaign could be debunked. But a juicy tale of a billionaire love triangle was irresistible. Once my identity and my connection to Julian Vance were dissected online, the truth wouldn't matter. I'd be branded a social climber, and she could watch my reputation burn from the sidelines. Connie, cancel the Vanity Fair interview, I said into the phone, my voice terrifyingly calm. Change of plans. Initiate the tidal wave protocol. Now. I want every media channel we have to kill this video's traction, and I want the tech team to trace the source of this video and the publisher's IP address. I want to know who's behind this by morning. The tidal wave protocol was my firm's highest-level crisis response plan, designed for sudden, malicious media assaults. Activating it meant war, with no expense spared. Understood, Catherine, Connie replied, her voice all business. I hung up and slumped onto the sofa. I had underestimated Tiffany's viciousness and overestimated Ethan's integrity. That video angle, Tiffany couldn't have done it alone. Ethan had allowed it, maybe even helped. His remorseful act was just that, an act. He wasn't angry at Tiffany's stupidity. He was furious at my betrayal. He couldn't stand that I had escaped his orbit, let alone risen to a height where he had to look up. So he had to tear me down. How ironic. He was the one who had betrayed our marriage, yet now he was punishing me. I picked up my glass and downed the rest of the scotch. The liquid burned my throat but couldn't warm my frozen heart. My phone rang again. It was Julian. "I saw the video," he said, his voice unreadable. "Do you need me to handle it?" "No." I took a deep breath, my resolve returning. This is my war, and if I'm right, this is just step one. She's putting me on a pedestal to be judged, forcing my hand. Then she'll release the second bomb. "The second bomb?" "If I'm not mistaken," I said, my voice hardening, "her next move will be to go after Mia. A mother's weakest point is always her child. Tiffany will leak the audio of what I said in the headmaster's office, edited out of context. She'll paint me as a vindictive shrew who teaches her daughter violence just to get back at her ex. Once that narrative takes hold, I'll be finished." There was a pause on his end. "I understand. Catherine, do what you have to do. The Vance Group's legal and PR departments are at your disposal, 24/7. Remember, you're not fighting alone." His words were a warm current in my frozen heart. After we hung up, I walked to Mia's room. Through the crack in the door, I could see her peaceful, sleeping face. So innocent. The world's ugliness had no place here. I would not let anyone hurt her. Ever. I returned to my office, opened my laptop, and began to write. Tiffany wanted to play with fire. Fine, I would give her an inferno. She wanted to see my reputation in ruins. I would let her watch as she herself went up in flames. I would show everyone that Catherine Shen was not some pushover. Anyone who dared to use my daughter as a weapon would have their entire world destroyed. The city outside my window fell into a deep slumber, but my battle had just begun. My fingers flew across the keyboard, every keystroke fueled by a cold, righteous fury. The next morning, as the first rays of sun pierced my office window, Connie called, right on schedule. "Catherine, we have it all," she said, her voice tired but triumphant. "The blog is registered to a P. I named Leo Webb. We checked his financials. Yesterday evening, he received a wire transfer for $50,000 from Tiffany Cole's personal assistant. And," she continued, "we also recovered some deleted files from Webb's computer. Not just yesterday's video, but also the audio recording of you in the headmaster's office. Just as I thought. Has the audio been released? Not yet, but our media monitoring shows several prominent parenting bloggers have started posting think pieces about single-parent households, childhood aggression, and the impact of a mother's toxic influence. They're priming the audience. The plan is to create a moral panic and then drop you in the middle as the prime example. I see." My voice was dangerously calm. "Send all of Webb's information, including evidence of other dirty jobs his agency has done anonymously, to a few of his biggest competitors in the PI business. And include the wire transfer records from Tiffany's assistant." "You want to?" Connie hesitated. "Cut the head off the snake," I said coldly. "Tiffany thinks she hired a professional attack dog. I'm going to put that dog down. I want Leo Webb to pay for his greed, and I want every PI in this city to know what happens when they take a contract out on Catherine Shen." "Understood." After hanging up, I stood and looked out over the waking city. Tiffany's plan was meticulous. Use celebrity gossip to hook the public, pivot to a relatable parenting debate to garner sympathy, then deliver the fatal blow with the audio. It was a textbook smear campaign. The Catherine of 3 years ago would have been drowned by the tidal wave of public outrage. But I wasn't that Catherine anymore. I opened my phone and went to the gossip blog. The video's view count had surpassed 3 million. The comments were a cesspool. I ignored them and went directly to the blog's contact page, sending a direct message. I typed one sentence. "You have 1 hour. Delete the video and issue a public apology, or face the consequences." I tossed my phone aside and went to get ready. Half an hour later, dressed in a sharp, white power suit, I was about to leave when Connie called again. "Catherine, the blog just posted something new." I raised an eyebrow and opened the link. It wasn't an apology. It was a defiant provocation. The headline read, "An open letter to a certain arrogant ex-wife. Money can't buy silence, and the truth will prevail." The article was a self-righteous diatribe, painting the blogger as a heroic journalist fighting for justice against my bullying and threats. It ended with a screenshot of my one-sentence message. I laughed. A bitter, humorless sound. Some people really needed to see the coffin before they would shed a tear. "Connie," I said, calling her back, "initiate Plan B. Tell Jessica Liu she's about to get a much bigger story." I drove not to my office but to an exclusive private club downtown where Jessica Liu, the editor-in-chief of Vanity Fair, was waiting for me. "Catherine, you finally made it. You've really kicked the hornet's nest this time," she said, handing me a glass of sparkling water, her expression worried. Jessica was a media veteran who had mentored me in my early days. "Don't worry, Jess. I've got this." I smiled, pulling a flash drive from my purse and placing it on the table. "This is the exclusive I promised you." "What is it?" she asked, picking it up. "It's a trifecta," I said, ticking off the points on my fingers. 1. Hard evidence of Ethan Cole's infidelity during our marriage and his illegal transfer of marital assets. That includes his text messages with Tiffany, hotel receipts, and the bank statements from the offshore accounts he used. 2. Tiffany's entire sordid history. Dropping out of college, her sugar daddy arrangements, her forged resume, and multiple plastic surgeries, complete with before photos and sworn affidavits from her former classmates. And 3, I looked her straight in the eye. The official legal notice from the Vance Group's counsel announcing a lawsuit against Ethan and Tiffany Cole for the illegal acquisition and dissemination of images involving Chairman Julian Vance, citing defamation and reputational damages. Jessica's hand, holding the drive, began to tremble. She looked at me, her eyes wide with shock. "Catherine, you're going to destroy them." "They tried to destroy me first," I said, my voice devoid of warmth. "An eye for an eye. But releasing this, you'll be dragged right back into it, your relationship with Julian Vance." "My relationship with Julian Vance is clean. We are business allies and partners in battle," I said, meeting her gaze without flinching. "As for my own reputation, I don't care what people say about me, but if anyone dares to hurt my daughter, I will burn their world to the ground." My intensity seemed to convince her. She was silent for a long moment, then nodded and put the flash drive in her purse. "I get it. Don't worry, Catherine. I'll write this piece myself. I'll make sure everyone sees exactly who the real victim is." "Thank you, Jess." "Don't be silly. We're friends." Leaving the club, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. I was holding a nuclear bomb, and I had been hesitant to press the button. Wiping out Ethan, the man I had once loved, felt like a final, brutal severing, but they had forced my hand. I was about to start the car when my phone rang again. An unknown number, I answered. A deep, authoritative voice came through the line. "Is this Miss Catherine Shen?" "Yes, speaking. Who is this?" "This is Arthur Vance, Julian's father." My heart stopped. Arthur Vance. I'd only ever seen that name in the upper echelons of financial journalism, a legend from a bygone era. The patriarch of the Vance family, the man who built the empire. He had supposedly retired years ago, and now he was calling me. My mind raced. Was it about Julian? About Mia? About the scandal? "Mr. Vance, an honor," I managed, my voice steady. "Miss Shen, I would like to see you," he said, his tone leaving no room for negotiation. It was the voice of a man accustomed to absolute obedience. "Come to the estate. Now, my driver will text you the address." He hung up without waiting for a reply. A second later, an address appeared on my screen. The Vance estate. This was a summons, not an invitation. And at a time like this, it was not a friendly one. It was a trap. To go was to face an opponent 1,000 times more formidable than Ethan and Tiffany combined. To refuse was to show weakness, to confirm his worst suspicions about me, and perhaps provoke him into acting against me directly. I hesitated for only 3 seconds. I was going. I needed to see what this old lion wanted. I texted Connie, telling her to pause all actions against the Coles until further notice. Then I turned the car and headed towards the address on my phone. The Vance estate was a sprawling, Gilded Age mansion nestled in the forested hills of Lake Forest. My car was stopped at the imposing wrought iron gates by two stone-faced security guards. After I gave my name, they opened the gates, and a butler was waiting to lead me inside. I was escorted through long, art-filled corridors to a mahogany-paneled library. Arthur Vance sat in a large leather wingback chair by the fireplace. He looked to be in his late 60s, with a full head of silver hair, but his posture was ramrod straight, and his eyes were as sharp and predatory as a hawk's. He didn't speak, just watched me, his gaze sweeping over me as if assessing a piece of livestock. I met his stare head-on and sat in the chair opposite him. "You have nerve, Miss Shen," he finally said, his voice a low rumble. "You wanted to see me, Mr. Vance. It seemed impolite to hide," I replied with a faint smile. He grunted, then poured 2 glasses of what looked like a very old single malt scotch. "My son's a fool. His judgment has been clouded." He pushed a tablet across the table. On the screen was the gossip video and its toxic comment section. "Julian is the sole heir to the Vance Group. His reputation is the reputation of this family, this company. I will not have his name dragged through the mud and associated with this kind of tabloid trash. I will not have him made a laughingstock over a woman. So, he was here to blame me." "Mr. Vance, with all due respect, you're mistaken," I said calmly. "My relationship with your son is purely professional. The video was a malicious fabrication by my ex-husband. Fabrication or not, the damage is done," he snapped. "And you, Miss Shen, are the source of the problem." In his eyes, I was the scarlet woman, the distraction, the source of his son's folly. "Name your price, Miss Shen." He leaned forward, revealing his true purpose. "How much will it take for you to leave Julian and to leave this city for good?" The same question. Just like Ethan, these powerful men, convinced that everything and everyone had a price tag. I smiled, a sad, bitter smile. "What if I told you I don't want money, Mr. Vance?" His brow furrowed. "Then what do you want? A stake in the company? To marry into this family?" His voice dripped with undisguised contempt. "Let me be clear. That will never happen. The Vance family marries its own kind, women from powerful, respectable families, women who can be an asset. You," he looked me up and down, "a divorced single mother, you are not worthy. Not worthy." The words were like red-hot nails driven into my heart, my hands clenched into fists under the table. But I held my composure. Any emotional outburst would only confirm his low opinion of me. I took a deep breath and smiled again. "Mr. Vance, you misunderstand. I have never had any desire to marry into your family. I'm not interested in your fortune. I work with your son because we have a common enemy." "Oh?" He was intrigued. "You must be aware of the power struggle 3 years ago when your son's uncles nearly ousted him. The media campaign against him was secretly funded by one of them, your brother, Robert Vance. And who was Robert Vance's local partner in that venture? My ex-husband, Ethan Cole. This was the ace I'd been holding, a connection I'd uncovered during my initial research for Julian, something even he might not have known." Arthur Vance's face changed. The hawk-like eyes flashed with a dark, dangerous light. "I have all the proof," I pressed on. "My alliance with your son isn't just about my personal revenge. It's about neutralizing a threat to him and to you. From that perspective, Julian and I are soldiers in the same trench. Are you really going to push away an ally to protect an enemy who has already stabbed your family in the back?" My speech left him in a long, brooding silence. He was looking at me differently now, with less contempt and more wary calculation. He clearly hadn't expected the little distraction to be holding such a powerful card. Finally, he spoke. "Even if what you say is true, you must stay away from Julian. Your alliance, your partnership, it ends today." "Why?" "Because," he said, a complex emotion flickering in his eyes, "I have already arranged his marriage." Marriage. The word exploded in my head, shattering my composure. "Her name is Caroline Lee, from the Lee family in Hong Kong. Our families have been allies for generations. This union is not negotiable. The Lee family of Hong Kong, a true global dynasty, an heiress who, in terms of family, education, and looks, was Julian's perfect match." So this was it. He wasn't here to scold me. He was here to clean house before the new bride arrived. In his grand design, I was just an inconvenient loose end to be tied up. My heart sank into a cold, dark abyss. I had thought my alliance with Julian was unbreakable, forged in battle. I had thought it was more reliable than any fleeting romance. But I had forgotten. To men like this, an ally was just a chess piece. And when a piece was no longer useful, or stood in the way of a more important move, it was sacrificed without a second thought. Today, I was that piece. "You're a smart woman, Miss Shen. You know what to do," Arthur Vance said, satisfied by my devastated silence. He slid a check across the table. "This is $50 million, a severance package for your services to this family. Take it, take your child, and disappear. Move abroad, go somewhere no one knows you, and never contact Julian again." $50 million. For 3 years of my life, for all the battles I'd fought for Julian, for my loyalty. That's all I was worth to him. It was so pathetic, it was hilarious. I started to laugh. A loud, unhinged laugh that brought tears to my eyes. Arthur Vance frowned, confused. I wiped my tears and stood up, looking down at him. "Mr. Vance, do you think the men in your family are so irresistible that every woman on earth should be grateful for your scraps? 3 years ago, Ethan Cole tried to pay me off with a house. Today, you try to buy my entire life for $50 million. You are all the same, arrogant, self-important men who think money can solve everything. I, Catherine Shen, am not for sale." I picked up the check and right in front of him, tore it into tiny pieces. The confetti rained down from my fingers. Arthur Vance's face turned purple with rage. He slammed his hand on the table and shot to his feet. "You insolence! Don't you dare refuse my generosity. I have 100 ways to make sure you and that bastard child of yours can't survive in this country." Bastard child. The words sent a tidal wave of pure rage through me. I lunged forward and grabbed the front of his shirt, my eyes blazing. "Say that again," I snarled. He was stunned, clearly having never been treated this way in his life. You crazy woman, let go of me." "My daughter is my life," I hissed, my voice shaking with fury. "Anyone who insults her, I will destroy." "You think you're so powerful, Arthur Vance? To me, you and your future daughter-in-law are worth less than a single hair on my daughter's head. You think an arranged marriage can control Julian? Have you ever asked him what he wants? You know nothing about him. You only know your deals, your empire. You may be a successful businessman, but you are a pathetic excuse for a father." I shoved him away. He stumbled back, crashing into a bookshelf. "And keep your filthy money. Anything I want, I will earn myself. I helped your son win his company back from your brothers, and I can build my own life in this city without him. As of today, my alliance with Julian is over, and our business is concluded. As for Ethan and Tiffany Cole, that's my fight, and I'll handle it my way." Without another glance, I turned and stormed out of the library. When I stepped out of the Vance estate's heavy gates, the bright sun was blinding. I collapsed against my steering wheel and finally let myself sob. All the strength, all the pretense, it all came crashing down. I thought I was invincible, but his words had pierced the one part of me that was still vulnerable. I wasn't crying because I'd been abandoned or because I'd lost my powerful backer. I was crying for the sheer injustice of it all. Why was it that women like me, no matter how hard we fought, were still seen as disposable objects by the men in power? Why did my daughter have to be branded with a vile name just because she didn't have a father in the traditional sense? I cried until my phone rang, pulling me back to reality. It was Julian. I stared at his name, my heart aching. I couldn't answer. What would I say? Congratulate him on his engagement? Accuse him of betrayal? I couldn't do it. I declined the call, wiped my tears, and started the car. The alliance was over. From now on, I was truly on my own. I called Connie. "Connie, it's time for Plan C." My voice was hoarse but steady as a rock. "Catherine, are you sure? Once we start this, there's no going back. It's mutually assured destruction." Plan C was my most extreme, most reckless strategy. It wasn't a PR war, it was a capital war. "I'm sure," I said, looking at my own red-rimmed eyes in the rearview mirror. "They all want to see me burn." "Fine, I'll just take them all down with me." Plan C was simple. Short Ethan Cole's company into oblivion. For the next 2 days, I locked myself in my home trading office. I didn't sleep. My eyes were glued to the candlestick charts, my brain processing information at lightning speed. I leveraged every cent of capital I had, called in favors from every hedge fund contact I knew, and prepared to strike. Meanwhile, Ethan and Tiffany were celebrating. Their hired troll farms were spamming the edited audio of me all over the internet, successfully painting me as a toxic mother. The parenting blogs were having a field day. They thought I was finished. They had no idea what was coming. Monday morning, the market opened. On my command, a tidal wave of sell orders hit the market, crashing down on Ethan's company stock. Within 10 minutes, it was down 5%. Panic started to set in. His company issued a statement, insisting everything was fine. Then, Jessica Liu dropped her bomb. Vanity Fair published the article on all platforms simultaneously. The truth behind the tech fortune. Inside Ethan Cole's empire of deceit. The article was a masterpiece of investigative journalism, complete with screenshots of texts, bank records, before and after photos of Tiffany, everything. The internet exploded. The public opinion that had been so against me reversed in a single, whiplash-inducing moment. Ethan's stock plummeted. 10%, 15%, 20%. It was in freefall. But I wasn't done. That afternoon, I dropped my final weapon. I anonymously leaked the evidence of Ethan's collusion with Robert Vance to the SEC and several major financial news outlets. The market went into a frenzy. This was no longer just a messy divorce. It was corporate espionage and insider trading. The SEC immediately halted trading of Cole's company stock, pending a full investigation. I watched the screen, a sea of red. I felt no triumph, just a cold, empty void. I had won. I had destroyed him, and in doing so, I had also slapped the Vance family across the face. I had proven that Catherine Shen was not a pawn. She was a bomb. The doorbell rang. I opened it to find Julian. He looked exhausted, with dark circles under his eyes, his expensive shirt wrinkled. "Why didn't you answer my calls?" he asked, his voice raw. I didn't answer, just turned and walked back into the living room. He followed, closing the door behind him. "What did my father say to you?" he pressed. "Does it matter?" I said, my back to him, my voice like ice. "Mr. Vance, our alliance is terminated. You have your path, I have mine. We owe each other nothing." "Nothing?" He gave a bitter laugh and wrapped his arms around me from behind. "Catherine, what do you take me for? Just a business partner you can discard at will?" His embrace was warm, but it felt cold to me. I struggled out of his arms. "What else am I supposed to think? Should I wait around until after you marry your perfect Miss Lee and then let you pay me off with a check?" He froze. "Miss Lee? What are you talking about?" Seeing the genuine confusion on his face, a thought occurred to me. "You don't know?" "Know what?" "Catherine, I've been in Hong Kong for the past 2 days dealing with a crisis at our branch there. I just flew back this morning and saw the news." "Enough!" I cut him off. "Stop acting, Julian. You and your father, playing good cop, bad cop. It's pathetic." He made it perfectly clear. "I'm not good enough for you, for your family, and I have no intention of trying to be. So please, leave." "I'm not leaving," he said, his gaze intense. "Catherine, listen to me. My father's plan for my marriage is real, but I never agreed to it. The reason I was in Hong Kong was to meet with the Lee family and officially call it off. So what?" My heart remained numb. "You refuse this one, and they'll find another. As long as you are the heir to the Vance Group, your life will never be your own. And I'm tired, Julian. I'm so tired of being a pawn in your family's games. I just want a quiet life with my daughter." I tried to walk away, but he grabbed my wrist, his grip surprisingly strong. "Catherine," he said, his eyes turning red. "What if I wasn't the heir to the Vance Group anymore?" I stared at him. "What are you saying?" "Before I came here, I submitted my resignation to the board. I've relinquished my position, my shares, everything." He looked at me, his eyes burning with a sincerity I had never seen before. 3 years ago, I pulled you into my world to fight with me. Now I want to leave that world and enter yours. Will you give me that chance?" I was speechless. My mind was blank. This man who commanded empires, had just given it all up. For me. For the first time in 3 long years, my heart, which I thought had turned to stone, began to beat again, loud and fast. Just then, my phone rang. An unknown number. I answered. It was Ethan, his voice a broken, desperate sob. "Catherine, you won. You completely, utterly won. The company is gone. I'm ruined. But just tell me, why? How did we end up here? You used to love me so much." Listening to his incoherent rambling, I felt a strange sense of peace. I didn't answer. I just quietly ended the call. Then I looked up at Julian, at the universe of devotion in his eyes, and a slow, genuine smile spread across my face. Maybe, for the second half of my life, I could try living for myself. Behind me, the door to the bedroom creaked open. Mia stood there, rubbing her sleepy eyes. "Mommy?" she asked in her tiny voice. "Is it morning now?" I looked at her, the sunlight from the window illuminating her perfect, innocent face. "Yes, sweetie," I said, my voice full of a hope I thought I'd lost forever. "It's morning."